Welcome, everybody, to the Grynd Lyfe Podcast. This is Don Martin, your host, and today I'm really excited about our guest because this gentleman and I have gotten a chance to know each other over the past, I'd say 6 months or so, and he has had an incredibly unique career in the radio and real estate world, and I'm excited for you guys all to listen and learn from this gentleman about kind of how he grew up through the industries that he's in now, but also how he has really evolved as an entrepreneur through that process and created a really neat following for his show, as well as in the real estate world. So his name is Mr. Eric Willner. He's a real estate investor. He also has a property management company, and he's also the radio host of the Real Estate Show, which is live every single Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's live through the realestateshow.net and also on the Real Estate Show Facebook page. So, Eric, much appreciate you being on, man. Thanks for taking the time to be on with the Grynd Lyfe Podcast today.
Hey, Don, and thanks for having me.
You're welcome, man. So let's just dive into it and give everybody kind of a little background yourself. Give everybody kind of an idea of kind of where you were born and raised and how you kind of started evolving into the business world and where you began.
Yeah. Well, I'm an American citizen, very proud to be that. Born in Brazil, grew up what used to be half my life, but that half shrank for some reason. And so I've been here in the United States for a long time. Been in the real estate business now for 30 years. But interestingly, how I got into the real estate business, I actually was in college going to school at the University of Southern California. And one day I saw a little ad in the newspaper. That's a thing that people used to read. And in that classified was a 2-day seminar that about real estate. Now imagine, it's what everyone jokes about today, but I actually went to it, fell in love with the business, and as you can see, it kind of steered my path from engineering into the real estate business, where I've been for the last 30 years, and 21 of them actually on the radio show.
So tell me this. So from the engineer, how long did you actually work in the engineering world?
I didn't.
Not at all.
Other than some summer jobs. As soon as I went from engineering right into business school, and while I was going through the classes at business school, I started dabbling in real estate. Bought my first investment property. Found someone to help put up the money out because I was a broke college kid.
Sure.
And made all the mistakes along the way as I learned the business. But today we have it down to a pretty fine-tuned machine.
That's amazing. So just tell about that, just out of curiosity, when a lot of people that are listening here may be looking into, they're either an entrepreneur, they have a business, and obviously what I found is a lot of entrepreneurs eventually, if not just quicker than normal, want to get involved in the real estate world, because I think that's, to me anyway, one of the smartest places to put your money. It's real. That's why I call it real estate. So tell me about you. How did you do that the first time? How did you find somebody to help you fund that?
Well, it's always easier to go to family. So that's where I went. And after some cajoling and convincing to put up, I bought, this little FHA foreclosure property. And then decided that I was going to do all the work and fix it up myself. And I practically moved into it, and painted by day and sanded by night, and did whatever it took to do that. And then once it was done, put it on the market to sell it, and say, this thing actually works. You can actually, it validated. And I think that's the hardest part for people is when they get into real estate, is that they hear all these wonderful stories, and there's a million of them. And some of them are true. Some of them probably are a little bit expanded, but the validation, of getting your first deal done is the greatest thing. And then, you started to look at, well, this is good to do on one deal and then the next deal. But, the joke always used to be, as soon as I went to closing to sell a property, I would kid around with the seller or the buyer. And I'd say, well, the good thing about today is that, you got the house that you were looking for. The sad thing for me today is that I'm unemployed. And they would have this sudden like worried look like, oh no, Eric, what happened? And I go, well, now I need to find somebody. So is there anyone else you could refer me to that is either interested in buying or selling a property, so that I always had the sort of the next one coming?
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. The amazing thing about it is that the incredible process of that is, and it's a key I would say a key focus on people that are entrepreneurs. And that's a really good lesson, is making sure you constantly have leads and you have a way to create leads. And that's a great tip, by the way, for all of you guys listening, to get people keeping lead to people and getting that process of flow, especially for those of you that are in the real estate world. My first deal, Eric, right, in real estate was I purchased a property for $17,500. It was a property that literally was in the middle of a rehab, and the person who owned it ended up getting sick and passing, and I didn't know about it. I just was introduced to the property by the real estate attorney that was handling the estate in Delaware. The property, was could have been a valuable property, but there was massive piles of lath and plaster in the middle of every single room because they were demolishing it from the inside, and it looked like the house looked like it needed to be torn down. So, I made an offer at $10,000. The real estate attorney, countered at $17,500. I paid cash for it. Put another $13,000 of demoed it down to a shell, and then sold it as the shell at $85,000. So I was like, woohoo, proof of concept, $50,000 in profit, right? And I fell in love with real estate. What I didn't realize, and you could probably elaborate on this, is that, yeah, that's cool doing able to flip, but the tax benefits of that aren't nearly as good as holding, at least in my perspective, of kind of buying and holding and having the tax benefits of having a property that appreciates through time, that you can borrow against tax-free and all those type of things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think a lot of people probably get their first start, with finding something, that diamond in the rough, if you will. And, that's an important thing, because a lot of times I talk to investors and they say, oh, well, that property, oh, it's in terrible shape. And I say, listen, that's where the value comes in,
Agreed.
Any business is, what value can I add to it? And you got to look at it, not what it is, but what can it be?
Yeah.
And so you're absolutely right on that one. But then, even though I was kidding around that I'm unemployed at the end of that deal, I started saying, well, how do I connect and have some more continuity? And of course, the natural thing is to turn that rental property into a rental property. And so
right.
That's where I started. I love the idea of every month, there's checks in the mail to me. And so that's how we started. In fact, today I have a website called Automatic Landlord, automaticlandlord.com. And it's because I started, looking at this process. Now, see, here's the engineering. People say, well, don't you feel like you wasted 4 years of engineering school and you didn't even go out and use it? And I says, I use it every single day. I use it all the time. The fact that I'm an engineer gives me an advantage of being very analytical. The fact that I'm an engineer is I can do math in my head very, very quickly. And I would even say I do arithmetic in my head very quickly. Real estate is a very simple business. And so it really is more on arithmetic than anything else. But the bottom line there is when you start adding one house, and even if it's $100 extra a month after you pay your mortgages and all your bills, you string together 4 or 5 of those, that makes a difference in most people's lives. You get better at this, and now it's $1,000 a month. How many of those do you need to replace even what your income is? And that's what, I figured out. I love the idea. Anything that had to do with recurring income, I'm interested. My ear opens up immediately if you tell me that it's nice to sell something once. And I consider myself a decent salesperson, but I like that when I sell something once, it pays me over and over and over.
I love that. And obviously that's how you and I got connected, because some other business dealings that we have creates similar type of residual ongoing, which is really, really neat. And that's what I love. I like something repetitive, ongoing. In fact, if it doesn't create residual or ongoing cash flow, I don't do it. It has to do that for me. That's why it's my primary business. and which we met through, but also and then into the real estate or something, a membership based a program that I have for my outdoors program, like my outdoor. You can see I'm big outdoors when I got my fish hook bracelet type of thing.
Oh, cool.
I love
That's
outdoors.
cool.
I have a little membership based thing for that. Yeah, so yeah, it's always has to be something ongoing, and I think that's smart business. I got a question for you, and I want to have you speak upon this. A lot of times in real estate, what I found to be my favorite benefit was the asset you're building in that process. So what I mean by that is, and maybe if you can elaborate on this for the listeners, even if you're not making a big cash flow when you buy a property and after you pay all, just say you're even at break even, or if you're only making $50 a month or $100 a month at first, what I have always fallen in love with from the real estate world is that property over time, real estate always appreciates on a large scale, on a large sample size. Now, there's ebbs and flows, obviously, as you know, but they're usually real estate over the years. It is constantly appreciating in value. So what I love about it is not only am I having even a small cash flow, and every once in a while, if I see a place, I'll even buy something that maybe has a little bit of a negative cash flow because the appreciated value in 15 years where someone that's renting the property is paying that mortgage off for me. And now I have an asset that I can either one of two things: sell and pay a capital gains tax on, or refinance it and take all that money out tax free, which is my preferred way, and then let the renter continue to pay the mortgage. That was always my biggest value. What do you give us some of your?
Well, it's the same thing, and as an entrepreneur, and I have a very special, warm place for entrepreneurs in general in my heart. But I always like to tell people that the most American business that there is real estate, right? Because it's a piece of America. You can't do it any other way. And the beautiful thing about it, number one, is if you subscribe to what I was talking about as the automatic landlord, is to find great properties. And some of them you'll sell, but you'll cherry pick the good ones, the ones that have a good positive cash flow. And then you just put them on the shelf and let them do what they do. I'll tell you that if it weren't for rental properties, which absolutely saved my bacon back in the day of the great real estate bubble, they call it, but it was really the Great Recession, having that steady rental income, when everything else basically stopped and crashed and everything went down in value. And even if your real estate went down in value, which it did back then, the rents didn't.
Right.
In fact, rents became more important as more people got displaced and everything. So like you said, you're building an asset, and that asset base grows. And it's not a matter of if your real estate will grow in value and appreciate. It's a matter of when, okay? And so, I like to tell people all the time that real estate is the ideal investment. And I mean the ideal investment. And so much so as I use the word ideal as an acronym. And so real estate offers, and in fact, compare any other investment out there to these 5 points. Number one, I stands for income. Real estate brings you real cash flow income, not future income, not paper income, but I can go to the grocery store and spend this income every single month. Number one. Number two, the D, which stands for depreciation and all the other tax benefits. No investment vehicle out there has as many tax benefits as real estate does. And D is one of the nicest ones because for all the other expenses that you get to take on your tax return, depreciation, I don't even have to write a check. I get to write off the expense, but I don't have to worry about the writing the check or to have money leaving my account. So that's the D. Then I have the E, which is the equity. Now, equity is a real interesting one because equity, I even broke it down to there's 2 types of equity. There's passive equity that builds up. For example, as I pay down my mortgage, a little bit of that mortgage balance goes down, which means I have a little bit more equity every single month. So passively, I grow equity. But I can also force the equity by adding a room, improving, updating a kitchen, or doing things physically to the property. I can force that equity. And by the way, that equity growth, whether it be the pay down in your mortgage or the increase in the value from the repairs, can happen in a flat market, right? So I can grow the value of my asset. I can even do it faster than the market might be going down. So it's a way to counterbalance, in many cases, a downward market. So that's IDEA. And now the A is for appreciation. We were just starting to talk. Appreciation doesn't happen all the time. And I kind of look at it as the icing on the cake. It's gravy if there is. Yeah. But it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And if you look at real estate from a medium to long-term basis, in other words, you're not buying and just flipping, which is why we were talking about the beautiful thing about income producing property or rentals, is it the real big money in real estate is made by those people that hold on to it. Because eventually a wave of appreciation comes. We're in one now.
Yep.
And then the value of your property is going up, therefore building also more equity. And so the L finally in the word ideal is for leverage. There's no other asset out there that you can put as little as 3% down. If you're a veteran, 1% down. But even if you put 10% down, you can control a large asset. So in these times, for example, if you had an asset that was generating 5% in real estate, let's say it's appreciating at 5%, but I only put 10% down. That means that I have a 10 times rate of return on that rate. So I'm really making 50% on my money. Right. So again, real estate, I rest my case. It's the ideal investment.
It really is. It's amazing. And I'm an amateur real estate investor. I've done okay in real estate. You're the expert, and I appreciate your being on here. And you're just validating some things that I've thought. I mean, one of the things I just want to bring up to give it some life for everybody, just out of my experience, is I have a pretty good, nice property where I live in a really great real estate market. And I realized something where you talk about that forced equity, right? Because we want to buy a bunch more properties, right? What I didn't realize, and what you said, you only need a certain amount down to buy this value of property with this much down. So, but I realized that where I'm at, and I was looking at the price per square foot and where I live, it's astronomical. And I realized this, and this is what me and my wife are doing, because I said, we need to add some square footage to our home. We can add a third floor area for our kids' playroom and expand our bedroom over our garage without changing our footprint at all, but adding about 1,200 square feet. Now she's like, what? We don't need more space. And I'm like, yes, we do. And let me tell you why, because literally the value of our property for about $120,000 to $130,000 of investment on our part, the value goes up close to $400,000 where we live here for that. Yeah. So to me, now I have $300,000 or $280,000 ish, right, of equity that I didn't have before that I can use to borrow against to buy more real estate. So that's just kind of a thing that I had thought of. And when you said forced equity, man, that got me excited. So I'm like, yeah, I got it. I got that, that E.
It's a great return on your money. Where else can you get a better return on your money than that?
No, exactly. And obviously it's a mortgage that you could use against buy another, and 280,000 at a 20% down, type of thing. You're talking about $4 million in real estate that you can, you can, over I guess $1 million plus in real estate you can buy with that $200,000 cash down. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah. That you just, like, in my mind, I'm going all sorts of places. We can go on and on.
We'll talk more about that offline for sure, because I need your input. But it's just cool. So I love that ideal real estate. So good. So last thing. Listen, I want to keep on going with you because this has been great, and obviously you have a lot of experience. So you said it was 30 years in real estate now.
30 years since in fact, it's probably a little bit more now because I keep going back. I got my real estate license. So when I first started getting interested in real estate, I thought, like a lot of people say, well, do you think I should get my real estate license? I went out and got it. And so that's how I kind of remember the timing of it. But, and so back in 1985, but I soon realized, and this is, don't get offended, all you realtors out there, but I started realizing that realtors work for tips. They get, half of the 6% commission. And if that's before they split it with their own broker, so they might be working for, 1.5%, maybe 2%, maximum 3% if they're getting 100% commission on a standard deal. When as an investor, you and I are talking about rates of return of 5, 10, 20, 30%. And so I quickly realized that being a real estate agent on a retail setting wasn't what I wanted to do.
Right.
So that's when I started getting involved in other areas, real estate, then involved in the mortgages, and really investing for myself.
Yeah.
And then, and so that's it. And after a number of years of really getting into it, people are always asking me questions, which is how the radio show started.
Yeah.
And,
I was next.
So, yeah. So, believe it or not, 21 consecutive years on the air. And you mentioned all of the online ways to accept it. But what a lot of people, sometimes forget is this started out as a real brick and mortar, today it still is on one AM station in the South Florida area, AM 1470, which is WWNN. Thanks to apps like iHeartRadio, anybody can listen to it, even if they're not in Florida. So you just look for WWNN, Money Talk Radio 1470, and you can listen to it at 8 p.m. each night. We're also on, so we started out originally and still are on that original AM station, but we've grown now to 3 FM stations as well. So we're on 4, what I call the brick and mortar radio stations, along with the Facebook and then all the different streaming avenues.
That's awesome, man. Well, that's super exciting. And what I love about the whole thing is you're an entrepreneur who's giving back to entrepreneurs and giving value on a radio show that helps, obviously, other people learn from your expertise. And obviously, from a networking perspective, it's great for you, too, because you're coming across different people with different deals. And I'm sure, this generated a lot of great business for you, too. But, hey, listen, I always tell people, if you give out value to the world will always bring value back, and sometimes exponentially. And that's one of the things that I live by. Let me ask you this. We named our podcast Grynd Lyfe, and I actually ask this to every single guest because and I think people live life 2 different ways. And I spell life differently depending on how they live life. People live life with an I. They just get by. They just live life, Life, because they just do what they need to do to survive, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has different reasons for different purposes and whatever, but they kind of live life and they, maybe don't have a driving, they haven't found maybe their passion or their mission or their purpose yet. But other people I've found, when they finally identify their purpose or their mission, they live life with a why, meaning they have a why behind it. And I spell it Life. And that's
Very
where
cool.
So tell us about your why. What is your why? What's your driving purpose? What, maybe was originally that got you into real estate. You kind of alluded to it already, but what got you into business, and then your driving purpose now, and the why that fuels your grind, your hustle, your life.
Yeah, it's a real interesting question. And that why has evolved over the years. Of course, when you're young and hungry, you're doing it because you think that's the smartest way to build assets and to build income. And then when you start achieving certain levels of success, you realize, hey, there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
But today I will tell you, number one is to be an inspiration. I've always wanted to, look at my life, what it would look like through the lens of my kids. So I always wanted it to be like the example, and that you can really design. And that's what real estate has been for me. It's to be able to design my life. I design my hours. I design where I live. A funny little side story I'll tell you in a second about how I grew up, in a family that traveled a lot. And I love to travel. And now imagine the dilemma when you realize as a real estate agent that there's no travel involved in real estate because you sell your neighborhood. The only reason that you're ever going to travel is if you go once a year to the convention somewhere. And I always used to think in my mind, how could I combine my 2 passions, real estate and traveling? And a number of years ago, another one of these educators, gurus out there in the real estate market came to me and said, listen, you know so much about real estate, and I have this program where I send an expert out to people in their cities to open up their office in their market. And you could do that. And so that became my sort of claim to fame, because today you could blindfold me You could send me to any city in the United States, and in 48 hours, I will spin up a real estate business, knowing the right places to invest, why, right down to the zip code and everything. And so that became super fun to me because number one, here I am adding value, creating a business out of nowhere. I get to travel and see brand new markets, many of which I'd never been to, but I figured out the formula and I figured out sort of the algorithm. And so again, what I wanted to do is be an example and be able to always, I think about what would my kids think, you know, and am I setting the right example for them?
So it's almost like the legacy.
That's the why.
So the why is almost like the legacy, I'd say. Is that about accurate? I love that. I'm with you too. It's all about what you know. If people were to read the book Your Life, what would it read? Especially your kids, man. That's a really good point. So so this has become obviously super successful for you, and you own all. Here's one question that when I hear your story, why do you have a property management business? See, a lot of real estate investors, I hear it in different ways. A lot of investors say, hey, man, I love property management because they do all the hard work for me. But now you're an investor and you also have a management business. Why is that? You know, what was that something that was started early in your career you continued with, or was it something that you just, where did it come from?
An accident. It was an accident. Yeah. It was a good accident. Yeah. And basically what happened is, you know, with our radio show, my partner and I, you know, at that time I was really stronger in the mortgage side of the business. He was doing the real estate, and we were just, you know, knocking it out of the park. This was in the early mid 2000s, and you know, the number one objection that we would get when we would find these great investment properties and take it to the investors, they would say, yeah, but you know, I don't have time to, you know, to manage properties. What if the tenants call me in the middle of the night? You know, what I call the proverbial TNT of real estate, which is tenants and toilets. And so one day over lunch, my partner and I, we just said, you know what, let's get rid of that objection. Let's start managing the properties for our investors. And, you know, we already had a good momentum going. And so overnight we spun up a brand new property management company. Those objections went away, and all of a sudden, you know, our sales, which were like this, went like this, and now we had a business, a saleable business that generates income. And a little secret, if you promise not to tell anybody, is that a property management is like the next best thing to owning the real estate, because I make a little piece, just like, you know, after expenses, and a landlord makes a little bit left over. Well, I get to make a little piece on your real estate also. So it's just another annuity.
Yeah, that's cool. And I never heard of it put that way, but that does make a lot of sense. You know, a lot of times people are like, they're delegating, offloading, but at the same time, I would probably say if and you could probably allude to this too, but I guess if the tenants are vetted properly, it's not as challenging as sometimes people may think it is.
So a shameless plug for a future conversation is that's why I came up with the automatic landlord. And the automatic landlord was all about, because the people love the idea of owning investment real estate property. They hate the idea of the TNT. So I started, you know, what I started doing is looking at every different way. How do I manage properties without having to physically, personally manage the properties? And so there's all sorts of systems and so forth that you can manage. And so today I can manage a sizable portfolio of real estate without any of the headaches, hassles. You don't see my phone, you know, ringing while we're talking like a busy property manager would normally have. And there are systems, there's ways to do this that you can do this and literally, you know, be a laptop entrepreneur, live and travel wherever you want, and still manage your properties and keep the checks coming in.
Living the dream, right? Living the dream.
Yes.
That's what it's all about. So Eric, last thing, man, and then this has been awesome and a lot of great information. Guys, just make sure you go check out the Real Estate Show, by the way, on Facebook Live, through the Facebook page, through the realestateshow.net. Of course, is where all of the past shows you can listen to. But last thing I just want to bring up, because you and I have actually got connected, and we have a really neat partnership that we have with a few others that's really interesting and incredibly unique for people who own real estate, to help them actually eliminate the debt at the most effective way possible. And I just wanted to bring that out for all the listeners to know. Keep an ear out for some more shows that Eric has come out, which is going to talk about how to leverage your own money, and what you're already creating to eliminate debt, to actually maximize the amount of money that goes towards principal, but limit the amount of money that you're wasting on wasteful interest payments. And we have a really neat business partnership that we have here that we're going to be bringing to the world. I just want to throw that out there so all of you can be aware to listen, watch out for it, and stay, keep your ear to the ground. And when you hear that, this is something you definitely want to learn more about. And I'm excited to be working with you, man. I really am. I'm pumped about that.
Me too. Likewise, Don.
So, Eric, last minute thoughts. Let's just say this. If there was someone who wanted to, they've never worked in real estate before. They've never owned real estate. They're an entrepreneur. They want passive income. What would be the first thing that you'd recommend them to do? And then we'll wrap up.
Well, as in any project, job, business, get the information, and that's what the whole real estate show is all about is, you can tune in for free. Don't worry about spending, the tens of thousands of dollars on boot camps, courses and everything. Start listening to the show, get familiar with the concept. And then, the next step there is find somebody that you trust, that you believe in, and get yourself a mentor. Having a mentor or a coach or somebody, to sit on the shoulders of giants who've been there, done that is 100%. All the most successful CEOs have coaches. All the most successful athletes in the world have multiple coaches. I think they're on to something. And so the fastest path to learn somebody, same way when I, looked at the business we were talking about, I said, tell me who the best people are. Let me talk to them and let me follow them and shadow them and just, suck up as much information as I can. And then of course, the most important thing, knowledge, they say, is power, but I always say knowledge plus action is power, because knowledge is potential power. Yeah.
I love that. And if I could throw one more thing, and one of my favorite things that I've ever heard said in regards to having to becoming an investor is making sure you have a cash flow, a B, to fund your I. Robert Kiyosaki says you have to have a B, a business, to be able to fund your investment platform, and that's where I come in. So Eric, that's why I'm so excited about our partnership, man, because you have so much to offer people from the investment standpoint, from maximizing their money. And then obviously us together will be offer people a B to be able to fuel their I. So talk to us about that, because once you have a cash flow coming, then you have the money to be able to start putting into the investment world, and it finishes all platform. Eric, man, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast, man.
It's been fun.
I'm excited to be on your show and keep this going and have some fun. And everybody, therealestateshow.net. Thanks, Eric, for being on, brother.
Thank you, Don. Looking forward to it.